Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to episode 203 of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Executive Editor of Total Retail. Joining me today is Doug Zarkin, Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer at Pearle Vision, a leader in the optical retail category, providing exam and eyewear retail products. We're going to be discussing Pearle Vision's pivot from being a promotional-driven business, as well as the new brand message it wants to communicate to consumers, and how Pearle Vision has evolved from being a promotional-led to a quality of care-led business in a very competitive category. Thanks for joining me today, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
So let's kind of jump right into the conversation. As I mentioned in the intro, kind of a little bit of a shift in approach here in terms of Pearle Vision, kind of moving away from almost a decades-long reliance on aggressive price promotions to drive customer acquisition and growth to kind of a shift to, focusing on eye care and, your quality of care-led business. Can you talk a little bit about the decision behind that in terms of Pearle Vision?
Sure. So the optical retail category is incredibly competitive and rapidly becoming commoditized, with the influx of low-price competitors really devaluing what is a medical device and an engineering marvel, which is to put a medical device on your face. When I joined the business in 2012, we looked at how the brand was doing, our trajectory, and where we stood in the landscape. And we realized that we had lost a bit of our DNA in the battle for market share. This brand was founded by Dr. Stanley Pearle in 1961, and he really believed that the success of Pearle Vision was predicated on an unmatched commitment to care, from the exam room to the retail floor. And so we recognized that actually the pathway forward was somewhat taking two steps back, regaining an understanding, an appreciation, and an embodiment of what our founder believed when he started the business in 1961. And truth be told, that really has led us to incredible success in the last 7 years.
So looking back, at the effects of, as you had noted, it was really you had gotten away from kind of the core values of the brand. What were the effects on, the business as a result of kind of using price promotions as your primary tool to drive customer acquisition?
I think what it did is it diminished what really made us special, which is being composed of licensed owners, doctors, associates, who really are committed to the people behind the eyes. When you have to give something away in order to sell something, you're really putting yourself more in the commodities game. Our doctors are highly trained, our associates are highly trained, and in many states have to be licensed. And our product is best in the world. And what we were actually doing was downplaying our expertise and role in the ecosystem by beginning the dialogue focusing on price.
Yeah.
When you do that, there's really no place to go but down. And so elevating the focus on care has really allowed us to excel both top line and bottom line.
And you mentioned, the philosophy of gaining market share. As more competition enters the marketplace, we have all these, from the Warby Parkers of the world to Zenni, these businesses that are popping up online, these direct-to-consumer startups. The care, I guess, would, the eye care, the actual going in and seeing a doctor, that's kind of the differentiating point that you really want to stress to consumers?
We really want to stress that at Pearle Vision, what you are going to get when you walk through the front door of any one of our eye care centers is a brand that's going to deliver an unmatched commitment to care, which is really the experience part of the value equation. The price you pay obviously is relative to the experience you deliver. You walk into McDonald's, if they charged you $15 for a Big Mac, you'd flip out. You wouldn't do it. But if you walked into Morton's and they charged you $15 for a filet, you'd be thrilled. And why? Because the experience that you get at Morton's far outweighs the price that you're paying. And conversely, the experience you're getting at McDonald's doesn't equate to justifying $15 for a hamburger. So said differently, at Pearle Vision, we believe that the value that we offer our patients is a elevated experience, which allows us to command a premium price for a premium product and service.
Yep. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pearle Vision recently partnered with Reputation.com. So let's dig into that a little bit. What about that partnership offers that, the Reputation.com? What's kind of attractive to Pearle Vision about that new venture?
So in making the decision to be a brand that was going to once again refocus itself on quality of care, measuring how we're doing in that regard is essential. And while Net Promoter Score is a good indicator, what it doesn't offer you is something that we call data in the wild, which is actually verbatims. When you're talking to a medical professional, a doctor, highly educated, and you're trying to explain to them that they're not delivering an adequate level of care, that's not a very easy conversation to have. Doctors go to medical school, optometrists go to medical school. And so you want to be able to use the voice of the patient as a means for helping bring to life opportunities to make that quality of care that much better. It may be a sound medical experience, but patients are looking for more than just a diagnostician. What they're really looking for is a relationship with their medical professional. And that's the soft skills that medical school doesn't necessarily teach. Reputation.com has allowed us to put a mirror up to the faces of our medical professionals and allow them to understand the opportunities to deliver a more holistic, pleasurable experience that leaves the patient feeling cared for.
Yeah, it's interesting. They almost, not only do they have, as you noted, the medical background, that education, but they're, in a sense, your store associate, you're, kind of the face of the brand. So you need to get them trained up on, that customer experience and giving the customer that holistic shopping experience that they've come to expect.
I think for us, that continuity of care, when we talk about a brand that is focused on genuine eye care, that just doesn't mean getting your prescription. The process of finding that perfect pair is actually very much a guided journey. We're not trying to sell you something. We're trying to guide you into what is perfect for you. The frame, what style appeals to you, the lens. There are so many different types of lenses, and education on lenses is something that most people don't have. But if you're somebody who leads an active lifestyle, you may want a photochromatic lens that goes from clear to sun, so not having to bring a pair of sunglasses with you. Those are things you're not going to know how to prescribe or to recommend unless you really get and take the time to understand the people behind the eyes. And that's truly what we're focusing on, are the people behind the eyes, to make that care experience really resonate.
Yeah, that consultative experience, obviously in store when they're meeting and have an appointment with one of the doctors in store. What about online? How are you trying to replicate that kind of consultative experience when somebody comes to the website?
So the website is really designed with a single purpose in mind, which is to connect you to your neighborhood eye care center and get you appointed to meet one of our eye care experts to get that high quality of care. For us at Pearle Vision, we recognize that duration between exams is anywhere between 12 and 36 months. Unfortunately, most people don't grow up realizing they need an annual eye exam, especially once you hit the age of 40, where something like presbyopia hits in, which is a medical condition that hardens the lens of the eye that makes you really need glasses. And so that education is coming in time, and it's coming through multiple channels that we're using. But when you have that epiphany moment, we don't want you to have to wait to the next business day to get an exam booked. PearleVision.com and each and every one of our eye care centers has a dedicated microsite to allow you to connect, find your doctor, schedule an appointment, and get on that pathway to seeing clearly and feeling great.
Yeah, and it really kind of works hand in hand, as you said, kind of that microsite on a local level where you can get into your local store for that exam. So moving back into the Reputation.com piece of this, can you talk a little bit about how the solutions from that company are enabling Pearle Vision to tell this brand story as well as manage its customers' experiences with the brand?
The complexity of managing your reputation is in truly understanding a very simple fact, that a brand can no longer 100% control its reputation. We live in an age of immediate feedback. Unfortunately, Twitter has become an opportunity for people to vent. More often, they're venting negative experiences or criticisms than positive experiences. That's just the nature of how that tool works. For us, what Reputation allows us to do, Reputation.com allows us to do, is to simply get in front of the narrative and try our best to regain control of that narrative. Control doesn't necessarily mean shaping the story. Control means ensuring that if we've disappointed a patient, that we can address those needs. Because I think one of the best opportunities that happens when somebody is disappointed is you admitting that there's something that we didn't do and rectifying the situation. If you go on to any service business, whether it's TripAdvisor or Yelp or OpenTable, and you see people that are complaining about a service experience, when that entity, that destination takes the time to make it right, you've turned a naysayer into an advocate. And at Pearle Vision, so much of our business is through word of mouth that we want to make sure that if we've come up short for whatever reason, that we do our best to make it right, because we really want that person to trust our brand and trust the associates that represent us. And trust is something that is earned. That's not something that is given. And so we work hard through access to our patients through items like reputation.com to ensure that we're triaging the negatives, but also saying thank you to those that have said, you know what, we've actually met or surpassed their needs.
Are there particular social channels where you're engaging with your customers most often, and maybe there's other channels in addition to social that these kind of interactions are taking place?
So whether it's email feedback, whether it's phone calls, Facebook and Twitter tend to be probably the most vocal. Our survey mechanisms through, reputation.com allow us to sort of channel our messages so that we're not missing when we've either delighted or we've come up short. And I think that's the importance of having a management process in place. Managing a reputation is really a full-time job, and you're never going to be able to do it fully, as I mentioned before. So you've got to be able to set yourself up, and most importantly, your locations up to be successful and getting a handle on the tenor and tone of how you're doing in the neighborhood. And that's really what the reputation.com platform allows us to do.
So that leads me to my final question, Doug. And in terms of, looking at the relationship, what are the primary business benefits that Pearle Vision has realized since it began working with reputation.com?
So as I mentioned before, optical retail has become rapidly commoditized. And the major players are looking to drive share of market by giving away product, by heavy promotions and discounts. And we've actually been able to drive, record top line and bottom line growth for ourselves and for our licensed owners by focusing on quality of care. Driving somebody to Pearle Vision with the expectation that they are going to get a high quality experience, price becomes an issue, but it becomes less of the driving issue. It's allowed us to reinforce why we exist within the optical retail ecosystem. It's allowed us to differentiate ourselves within the competitive noise that exists and fend off, online players who are trying to just simply commoditize the process by saying that your decision of where to go and what to buy should be driven by price. This is a healthcare business, and a pair of prescription glasses is a medical device. And so if you're inclined to spend the least amount of money on your medical device, there are plenty of options that you can go to. I don't know about you, but if I have a medical issue, I want the best. And that's really what Pearle Vision is able to deliver. We're a premium brand that delivers a premium healthcare experience and closes the loop with the best-in-class frames and lenses money can buy, allowing you to not only see clearly, but really celebrate that moment when your world has come back into 2020.
Great. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank Doug Zarkin of Pearle Vision for joining me today, telling us a little bit about the company's kind of new care-led business strategy. Please check out our podcast channel page, mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. But make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. Also, please take the time to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and I look forward to you joining us on the next episode of Total Retail Talks.